Hi, my name's Tanya Gregory, and I'm going to tell the story of Mr. Peabody's apples, and it was written by Madonna. In the town of Hapville, Mr. Peabody was congratulating his Little League baseball team. They had just finished a game. They hadn't won, but nobody cared because they had so much fun playing the game. Mr. Peabody was a history teacher at the local elementary school. And in the summer, every Saturday, he arranged for the boys to have a baseball game. Now, Billy Little, who wasn't a very big boy at all, he loved baseball. And he also admired Mr. Peabody. So every Saturday after the game, he would stay and help pick up all the balls and all the bats. And when that was done, Mr. Peabody would tell Billy, "Great job, Billy, and I'll see you next Saturday." Then Mr. Peabody would walk down the main street of Hapville, which wasn't a very big street at all. And as he walked, he would wave to all of his friends, and all of his friends would wave back. And then he'd come to Mr. Funkadeli's fruit market. And when he arrived, he would always look at the apples. And he would look for the reddest, the juiciest, and the ripest apple. And when he was satisfied, he would drop that apple in his bag and put the bag under his arm and proceed to walk home. Well, across the street was Tommy Tittlebottom. And Tommy Tittlebottom was amazed by what he saw. He saw Mr. Peabody grab an apple and not pay anybody for the apple. He was shocked. So he jumps on his skateboard and he skateboards home and he tells all of his friends. So the next Saturday, they have another great game. And again, of course, they didn't win, but nobody cared because they had so much fun playing. Well, Billy Little, he also helped pick up all the balls and all the bats. And when he was done, Mr. Peabody told him, "Great job, Billy, and I'll see you next Saturday." Then he started to walk down the main street of Hapville, which wasn't a very big street at all. And he waved to all of his friends, and all of his friends waved back. Then he arrived at Mr. Funkadeli's fruit market, and when he arrived, he went straight to the apples, and he picked out the reddest, the juiciest, and the ripest. And when he was satisfied, he dropped that apple into his bag, put the bag under his arm, and he started to walk home. Well, that Saturday, Tommy Tittlebottom and his friends were across the street, and they were shocked by what they saw. Mr. Peabody had not paid for that apple. So they ran off, and they told their friends, who told their parents, who told their neighbors, who told their friends in the town of Hapville, which wasn't a very big town at all. So the Saturday after that, Mr. Peabody arrives for the baseball game, and nobody's there. He looks around, and he sees Billy Little, but Billy Little has his head down, can't look up. Mr. Peabody says, "Billy, where is everybody?" Billy just keeps walking. He can't speak. He says, "Billy, where is everybody?" Billy says, "Mr. Peabody, they're not coming because they think you're a thief." What? They think I'm a thief? If I'm a thief, what did I steal? Well, Billy, he still can't look at Mr. Peabody. So looking down at his shoes, he says, "Tommy Tittlebottom and his friends said that they saw you take 2 apples from Mr. Funkadeli's market." Mr. Peabody says, "Oh, okay, I get it." He says, "You know, Billy, come with me. We'll go to Mr. Funkadeli's market to get this squared away." So he and Billy start walking down the main street of Hapville, which isn't a very big main street at all. And Mr. Peabody waves to his friends. And now his friends don't all wave back. In fact, some of his friends act like they don't even know him. Well, they reach Mr. Funkadeli's market. And Mr. Funkadeli jumps out and he's like, Mr. Peabody, what are you doing here so early? Don't you have a game today? And Mr. Peabody says, no, there was no game today. He says, but I was wondering, can I pick up my apple early today? And Mr. Funkadeli says, well, of course. You pay for your apple every Saturday early in the morning when you come to pick up your milk. You can take an apple anytime you want. So Mr. Peabody picks a red apple, the reddest, the juiciest. And when he's satisfied, he hands it to Billy Little. Billy Little, he is just shocked by what's gone on. And he says, I would take the apple, but I better go and tell Tommy Tittlebottom and explain the situation. Mr. Peabody says, you do that. And after you've spoken to him, let Tommy know that I would like to talk to him also. So Billy Little runs off and he finds Tommy Tittlebottom after a while. And when he finds him, he explains the whole situation. Tommy can't believe it. He's like, are you kidding me? So then Billy Little says, and Mr. Peabody wants you to go to his house. So Tommy's not excited about that, you know, but he runs over to Mr. Peabody's house, and when he gets there, he rings the doorbell. Well, Mr. Peabody immediately comes to the door, and he looks down at Tommy. Tommy looks up at him, and for a while, they don't say anything. Finally, Tommy says, I'm sorry, Mr. Peabody, but I didn't understand. You know, I saw you take 2 apples. All of a sudden, Mr. Peabody's eyebrows lift up and he feels a warm breeze across his face. And he looks at Tommy and he says, you know, Tommy, I don't care what you saw. It's the truth that matters. Tommy squirms a little bit more and he says, well, what can I do to make it up? Well, Mr. Peabody thinks about it. And he says, well, you know what, Tommy? This is what I want you to do. I want you to go home and grab a feather pillow and meet me at the baseball diamond in an hour. So Tommy's like, well, okay. So he starts running home and he thinks, a pillow? This is easy. So he runs home, gets his pillow, meets Mr. Peabody at the baseball diamond. Mr. Peabody arrives and he says, it sure is a windy day, isn't it, Tommy? Tommy's like, yeah, it's pretty windy. He says, well, follow me. Let's go to the top of the bleachers. So when they get to the top of the bleachers, Mr. Peabody hands Tommy a pair of scissors. And he says, Tommy, what I want you to do is cut the pillow in half. And then I want you to shake the pillow and release all the feathers. So Tommy's like, this is easier than I thought. So he cuts the pillow, he takes it, and he shakes it into the wind. And the feathers float high and far and wide. And he's just amazed. So he's looking. And then he thinks about it and he says, so, Mr. Peabody, is this all I have to do? Well, Mr. Peabody looks at Tommy and says, no, there's one more thing I'd like you to do. He said, I'd like you to now go and pick up every feather that has flown into the town of Happyville, which isn't a very big town at all. Tommy's like, are you kidding me? There's no way I can pick up all the feathers. And Mr. Peabody looks at him and says, exactly. And there's no way that you could undo the damage that you've done by telling all your friends that I am a thief and that I stole an apple from Mr. Funkadeli's market. Tommy understands now. So he stands there a minute and he looks at all the feathers. Finally, he looks at Mr. Peabody and he says, well, I better go now. I have a lot of work to do. And Mr. Peabody says, indeed you do, Tommy. And he said, and next time, don't be so quick to judge others. And Remember the power of your words. And he reached in the back of his pocket, pulls out an apple, and gives it to Tommy, and walks on his way home. The end.